Today's journey takes us to Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, New York. We were able to pay our respects to a few different people in this historic city and cemetery, from all types of notoriety and all walks of life. We are here today to visit the final resting place of singer-songwriter, record producer, and entertainer Rick James. Born James Ambrose Johnson on February 1st, 1948, Rick James is a native of Buffalo, New York. He was born to James Johnson Sr. and Mabel Sims. Unfortunately, his father left the family when James was only 10 years old. James' mother would take the leading role in his life and would work various jobs to provide for their family. She would work in bars, and it was there that James would see performers such as Miles Davis and Etta James perform. James would have a few times as a youth where he would get into some troubles, and these troubles led him to join the United States Navy Reserve. He lied about his age and joined early, trying to avoid the draft. It was during this time that James began playing with local jazz groups in New York City. As part of his reserve duties, he was to attend twice monthly reserve sessions aboard the USS Enterprise, which he missed. Because of this, he was ordered to Vietnam. In 1964, he fled to Toronto. In Toronto, he made friends with two people who would go on to become famous in the music industry, Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. James would form the band The Mynah Birds, which would see some success as they recorded with the Canadian division of Columbia Records. James would travel to Detroit with the band to record with Motown Records. One of the band members, unhappy with the treatment he received at Motown, left the band. Neil Young took his place. It was in Detroit that Rick James met Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder, his musical heroes. James, going by Ricky James Matthews at the time, was told by Stevie Wonder that his name was too long, and in an interesting bit of history, it was Stevie Wonder that suggested the name Rick James. It was during a financial dispute with the Mynah Birds that led to Motown's discovery of James' fugitive status with the Navy. He was told that no more music would be released until he resolved his legal issues with the Navy. He turned himself in and was sentenced to 5 months hard labor. He actually escaped after 6 weeks, was on the run for 6 months, and turned himself back in. He obtained some legal help through a cousin and was able to plea bargain his second court-martial down to 5 months. In 1967, he returned to Toronto. In 1968, James would produce and write songs for acts such as The Miracles and The Spinners. He would move to California. In California, he stayed involved in music in some degree or another, rubbing elbows with some of the biggest acts of the day. James was signed with A&M Records in 1973, releasing My Mama in 1974. The song would see success in Europe. He returned to Buffalo in 1976 and formed the Stone City Band. They would sign a contract with Motown's Gordy Records. He released a solo album in 1978 with Stone City Band with him and scored a top 20 hit, You and I. The song Mary Jane was on this album, and this catapulted Rick James to stardom and eventually sold 2 million copies. He followed this up with another million seller and a gold album. He would release the album Street Songs in 1981, which had some of his most popular and biggest hits of all time, Give It To Me Baby and Super Freak. The album would make it to number 1 and sell over 3 million copies. Although he became a producer and helped the careers of other artists, his image could be somewhat troublesome. He would smoke certain substances on stage and was often threatened with arrest by local law enforcement in whichever city he happened to be in. When MTV debuted, he tried to get the network to play Super Freak, but they declined, stating that it was too vulgar. By the late 1980s, his career was in a decline, but he received a degree of success when MC Hammer used a sampling of the music to Super Freak in his massive hit, You Can't Touch This. Rick James would receive a credit in this song and actually shared in a Grammy Award for his contributions. He suffered a stroke in 1998, which would slow his career. James would have documented substance abuse problems during his life, which would contribute to his health problems. This would also lead to some other legal issues for him. However, in 2004, he enjoyed a resurgence thanks to an appearance on Chappelle's Show. On August 6, 2004, he was found dead by his caretaker at his apartment just outside of Burbank. He was only 56. He passed from a cardiac and pulmonary failure. He was laid to rest here at Forest Lawn Cemetery, and that is what brings us here today. This cemetery is a beautiful place full of history. There's a president buried here, and I found one of the most unique memorials that I have ever seen in a cemetery, and that video will be on the way. I'm going to put links in the description for my Patreon and website, and another video of mine will be on the screen soon. It is my hope that you will watch it and click subscribe to join me on future videos and journeys. Once again, from Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, New York, I will see you again soon.